This guide has been developed with the assistance of many knowledgeable specialists in the field of Agile and other incremental software development methods to aid federal agencies, departments, and auditors in assessing organizations' readiness to adopt Agile methods. The best practices in this guide are not comprehensive. That is, they are presented as high-level concepts of software development, contracting, and program management that highlight the aspects of Agile development throughout a program's life cycle and address key risks to an organization, program, or team without prescriptive how-to steps. Many other publications address how to apply best practices in using an incremental approach to software development, and readers can refer to those sources when considering a specific development topic. The federal government spends at least $90 billion annually on information technology, IT investments. In our January 2019 High-Risk List report, GAO reported on high-risk areas, including the management of IT acquisitions and operations. 6. While the executive branch has undertaken numerous initiatives to help agencies better manage their IT investments, these programs frequently fail or incur cost overruns and schedule slippages while contributing little to mission-related outcomes. GAO has found that OMB continues to demonstrate its leadership commitment by issuing guidance for covered departments and agencies to implement statutory provisions commonly referred to as FITARA. However, application of FITARA at federal agencies has not been fully implemented. For example, as we stated in the 2019 High-Risk Report, none of the 24 major federal agencies had IT management policies that fully addressed the roles of their Chief Information Officers (CIO) consistent with federal laws and guidance. This Agile Guide is intended to address generally accepted best practices for Agile adoption, execution, and control. In this guide, we use the term best practice to be consistent with the use of the term in GAO's series of best practices guides. The most well-known feature of Agile software development is probably its emphasis on iterative product development and delivery. That is, development of software in iterations that are being continuously evaluated on their functionality, quality, and customer satisfaction. This method is well suited for programs in which the final product is to include distinct features, some of which may be discovered during the process rather than planned at the beginning. Information obtained during these frequent iterations can effectively assist in measuring progress and allowing developers to respond quickly to feedback from customers, thus reducing technical and programmatic risk. With its emphasis on early and continuous delivery of working software, Agile can be a valuable tool for organizations in helping to mitigate schedule and budget risks. We can compare requirements, design, development, and testing using Agile software methods to those of the formerly used predictive frameworks. Requirements, design, development, and testing are performed concurrently in small iterations for Agile and sequentially in predictive methods. In contrast to predictive methods, using an Agile framework can result in an organization producing software using frequent reviews and customer feedback to help ensure that the highest value requirements are being met. We can also compare Agile and predictive methods for developing software, assuming that high-level planning for both Agile and waterfall development has already occurred. Thank you for listening. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to learn more about Agile. What is the value of using Agile? With an emphasis on the early and continuous delivery of working software, Agile can be a valuable tool for mitigating risks by engaging customers in collaboration early in the program and continuously adapting to changing requirements and environment, thus limiting the chance of continuing to fund a failing program or outdated technology. While some versions of incremental development were being used as early as the 1950s, the Agile approach was articulated in 2001 by a group of 17 software developers that called themselves the Agile Alliance. In February 2001, the Alliance released the Agile Manifesto, in which they declared, "We are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. Through this work we have come to value individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, response to change over following a plan." The Alliance added that, while they recognized the value in the second part of each statement, Graham, processes and tools, they saw more value in the first part, Graham, individuals and interactions. The Alliance further delineated their vision with 12 principles. The 12 Agile principles behind the manifesto are: 1. Our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. 2. Welcome changing requirements, even late in development. Agile processes harness change for the customer's competitive advantage. 3. Deliver working software frequently, from a couple of weeks to a couple of months, with a preference to the shorter time scale. 4. Business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. 5. Build projects around motivated individuals. Give them the environment and support they need, and trust them to get the job done. 6. The most efficient and effective method of conveying information to and within a development team is face-to-face conversation. 7. Working software is the primary measure of progress. 8. Agile processes promote sustainable development. The sponsors, developers, and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. 9. Continuous attention to technical excellence and good design enhances agility. 10. Simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done, is essential. 11. The best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self-organizing teams. 12. At regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. There are numerous approaches, or frameworks, available for Agile programs to use. A framework is a basic structure to guide customers, rather than a prescriptive process. Each framework is unique and may have its own terminology for processes and artifacts, though the frameworks are not mutually exclusive and so can be combined. When implementing Agile in a federal environment, all staff, both government and contractor, will want to work together to define the Agile terms and processes that will be used for their particular program. Agile, as a concept, is not prescriptive. However, when applied to an organization, it may be. Regardless of the specific frameworks and practices, it is important that applying Agile aligns with the manifesto and Agile principles. Individual TEAM frameworks. Extreme Programming XP. XP is a process that originated from taking software best practices to the extreme. XP processes incorporate 5 key values: 1. Communication to feedback, 3. Simplicity for courage, and 5. Respect. XP values constant communication between customers, developers, user stories, and management, as well as having a simple and clean design. Pair programming and 100% unit testing are some examples of key XP practices. Feature-driven development (FDD). In FDD, development is driven from the functionality perspective. FDD adheres to the following steps: develop the overall model, build feature list, plan by feature, design by feature, and build by feature. FDD uses a number of best practices, including domain object modeling and individual code ownership. Kanban. The Kanban framework seeks to limit work in progress in order to alleviate bottlenecks throughout development. Team members pull work when they are able to, as opposed to work being pushed down to them, to smooth the flow of work and eliminate unevenness. Kanban uses the following practices: visualize the workflow, limit work in progress, manage flow, make policies explicit, implement feedback loops, and improve collaboratively. Kanban's most prominent feature is a visual task board divided into columns, at a minimum: to do, in process, and done. Tasks are written on notes and placed on the board, and move horizontally through the columns as the work is completed. As with other team frameworks, electronic means for facilitating flow are available to supplement manual-based visualization. Scrum. Scrum defines the team by 3 core roles: product owner, development team, and Scrum Master. Development is broken down into time-boxed iterations called sprints, where teams commit to complete specific requirements. During a sprint, teams meet for daily stand-up meetings. At the end of the sprint, teams demonstrate the completed work to the product owner for acceptance. A retrospective meeting is held after the sprint to discuss any changes to the process. Thank you for listening. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to learn more about Agile. Agile AT Scale Frameworks. Disciplined Agile DA. Building on different Agile methodologies, DA is a decision framework that can be scaled and is intended to address the whole product life cycle. Key aspects of DA include people-first, learning-oriented, hybrid methodologies, full delivery life cycle, process goal-driven solution focused, risk-value life cycle, and enterprise-aware. DA has defined roles of team members within the framework. Dynamic Systems Development Method DSDM. Previously known as DSDM Pattern, this is a framework for rapid development. There are 8 principles: 1. Focus on business need to deliver on time. 3. Collaborate for never compromise on quality. 5. Build incrementally from firm foundations. 6. Develop iteratively. 7. Communicate continuously and clearly. And 8. Demonstrate control. One core technique of DSDM is prioritizing requirements as must-have, should-have, could-have, and want-to-have. But would like or Moscow. Less large-scale Scrum. Less is a scaled-up version of One Team Scrum, and it maintains many of the practices and ideas of One Team Scrum. In Less you will find a single prioritized backlog, 2. One definition of done for all teams, 3. One product owner, and for many complete, cross-functional teams with no single specialist. Teams. In Less, all teams are in a common iteration to deliver a common, shippable product.
Hybrid framework.
Scrum been a combination of Scrum and Kanban, Teams generally abide by Scrum roles while using Kanban to view workload and improve flow. Scrumban can be considered the application of Kanban to a Scrum framework to help an organization tailor its Scrum to better align with their goals. With Scrumban, the amount of work is not limited to the sprint, but to the work in progress limit. Meetings in Scrumban are often scheduled as needed as opposed to a specific schedule with sprints. Related frameworks. Crystal. The Crystal method outlines different methodologies based on the number of people involved and the criticality of the software. The framework that most closely resembles Agile is called Crystal Clear. The methods rely on trust and communication. Unlike other methodologies that dictate discipline to specific practices, Crystal allows freedom for individual preferences and work habits. DevOps. DevOps, with its name stemming from a combination of development and operations, emphasizes collaboration between development, IT operations, and quality assurance with the goal of more frequent software releases. The overall DevOps values align with Agile, and DevOps is considered an expansion of Agile implementation practices to all areas of a product's life cycle. One common DevOps principle is infrastructure as code, meaning operating environments are managed the same as code with version control, automation, and continuous testing. Iterative development. Iterative development breaks down the work into smaller chunks known as iterations in order to design, develop, and test in cycles. Lean software development. Lean software development applies principles from lean manufacturing to software development. There are 7 key principles. 1. Eliminate waste. 2. Amplify learning. 3. Deliver fast. 4. Decide late. 5. Empower the team. 6. Build integrity in, and 7. Optimize the whole product. Challenges in implementing Agile frameworks. Challenges to organization commitment and collaboration. Programs using Agile software development methods require the ongoing collaboration and commitment of a wide array of stakeholders, including business owners, sponsors, users, developers, and cybersecurity specialists. 19. One way Agile promotes commitment and collaboration is by having teams work closely together in one physical location when possible. To facilitate continuous communication among the team members. However, officials from the federal agencies that GAO surveyed reported that teams had trouble transitioning to this philosophy. Specifically, they stated that teams were challenged in collaborating because staff were used to working independently and in individual workspaces. For example, some team members preferred to work alone rather than in a team room, viewed open communication, such as posting program status on a team room wall chart, as intrusive, or disliked showing work in progress to the federal customer. Agency officials also reported that staff members struggled in transitioning to self-directed teams. They stated that staff members used to taking direction from a program manager found it hard to take responsibility for their work and then elevate unresolved issues to senior officials. They also reported that cross-functional teams were difficult to form because federal employees tended to be specialists in specific functional areas. For example, a team member who represented specific customers was not always familiar with the needs of all customers. While Agile stresses frequent input and feedback from all stakeholders, officials noted that federal employees found it difficult to commit to keeping work products, such as schedules, updated to reflect the status of every iteration because they were not used to the rapid pace of development. They also said that teams initially had difficulty maintaining an iteration's pace because they were used to stopping their work to address an issue rather than making a decision and moving on. Officials also stated that federal customers were not always available to review deliverables as they were completed, which was necessary in order to keep the development team on pace with the iteration. Some agency officials stated that assigning and maintaining staff was an issue because their organization did not have sufficient staff to dedicate to multiple Agile teams. Staff with multiple, concurrent duties could not be spared from their other duties to dedicate themselves to the large time commitment required of an Agile team. Additionally, officials said that frequent work assignment rotations were common in many federal agencies, creating challenges as new staff needed to learn the roles and responsibilities of those being replaced. Challenges to preparing for Agile adoption. When an organization using waterfall software development migrates to Agile or other iterative methods, new tools and technical environments may need to be added to support program planning and reporting. However, officials reported that implementing Agile tools could initially create a challenge due to delays in buying, installing, and training staff on the use of these new tools. Furthermore, officials noted that Agile calls for performing development, testing, and operational activities concurrently, which can create significant demands on a program's technical environment. One official stated that preparing and maintaining synchronized hardware and software environments for these three activities to support frequent releases can be expensive and logistically challenging, especially for multiple concurrent iterations that can require more complex coordination of staff and resources. Another complication agency officials identified was the lack of clear guidance for Agile software development, particularly when agency software development guidance was for a waterfall approach. One official reported that, in order to account for Agile methods, new program policies and procedures would need to be developed, which they found to be a daunting task. They also stated that it was difficult to ensure that iterative programs could follow the standard approach. Another official stated that staff were nervous about moving from waterfall guidance and, when programs followed a mix of iterative and waterfall life cycle guidance, added confusion among the teams. The following is a recent example of the development of Agile methods for the U.S. Air Force's Space Command and Control Program. Thank you for listening. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to learn more about Agile. Case Study 1: Updating Policy to Reflect Agile Principles from Space Command and Control. In October 2019, GAO reported that the Air Force's Space Command and Control Space C program was taking an Agile approach to software development to more quickly and responsively provide capability to customers. According to Air Force officials, Agile development was relatively new to Department of Defense (DoD) programs. In the past, requirements were solidified in advance of development and the software was delivered as a single completed program at the end of the development cycle with no continual involvement or feedback from customers or ability to modify requirements. The Space C program was one of the first DoD software-intensive programs to move away from the waterfall approach and into an Agile framework. However, we reported that the then-current DoD acquisition instruction did not include guidance for Agile software programs. GAO reported that DoD officials stated that new software guidance was in development, and this guidance was expected to offer pathways for developing Agile programs. DoD had also developed a draft template to assist Agile programs with developing their acquisition strategies, though the template and associated software guidance were in the early stages of development. In the meantime, however, Space C to program officials confirmed that they were operating without specific software acquisition guidance. Space C to officials also clarified that, while Agile software acquisition guidance had not yet been formally published, the Program Office had been actively engaged with the Office of the Under-Secretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment in refining draft policy and guidance. The Program Office noted that its program activities over the past year had been informed by and were consistent with this draft guidance. Though DoD was taking steps to ensure that the Space C to program had a comprehensive approach in place for managing, identifying, and mitigating challenges associated with an Agile development approach, GAO reported that key program plans and agency-wide guidance were still in draft form, leaving uncertainty about how program development and oversight would ultimately proceed. Finalizing a robust acquisition strategy containing the key elements for ongoing planning and evaluation would better position the program for success. Success in Agile. Agile programs depend on having the flexibility to add staff and resources to complete each release and adapt it quickly, based on lessons learned from one release to the next. One official stated that federal procurement practices do not always support this flexibility. For example, contracts that require waterfall-based artifacts to evaluate contractor performance are not needed in an Agile approach where the contractor is part of the team and their performance is based on the delivery of an iteration. This official added that it can be a challenge for contractor staff to meet iteration time frames when tasks change, since federal contracting officers require structured tasks and performance checks. As a result, adding some flexibility in requirements is a contracting challenge. Chapter 6 discusses contracting best practices that can assist organizations as they work to reconcile Agile methods with contract requirements. Challenges in executing Agile methods. Programs using Agile methods develop software in increments that are added onto the previous build. However, some agency officials reported that their staff mistrust such iterative solutions. For example, one official stated that federal customers expect to see a total solution. Consequently, a demonstration of the functionality provided in one iteration or even one release was sometimes not considered good enough. The small increment of functionality demonstrated caused staff to doubt the Agile team's ability to deliver the remaining requirements, creating a parallel fear that the Agile team would not meet commitments. Officials also stated that this mistrust hindered the federal customer's ability to develop a definition of done, which is an essential component of the process. While a key tenet of Agile is prioritizing requirements, one official reported that customers found it challenging to validate and prioritize requirements by release, as they were used to defining all requirements at the beginning of the program and not revisiting them until they had been completed. Additionally, another official said it was difficult to reprioritize requirements when new work was identified. In addition, iterations may incorporate compliance reviews to ensure that organizational legal and policy requirements are being met. However, one official stated that they found it challenging to complete compliance reviews within the short, fixed time frame of a single iteration because compliance reviewers were used to following a less flexible schedule under waterfall development. Specifically, the official said that reviewers prioritized requests as they arose and that the reviews took months to perform. This caused delays for the iterations that needed to be assessed within a few weeks in order to proceed with the program in a timely manner. Challenges in evaluating Agile methods. Agile software development methods stress evaluation of working software over extensive documentation and traditional program management milestone reporting. Officials said that this difference can present challenges in evaluating federal programs due to the lack of alignment between Agile and traditional evaluation practices. For example, federal oversight bodies request status reports for waterfall development at development milestones and have not adjusted to Agile methods of frequent updates of each increment. As a result, an official reported that Agile teams became frustrated when dashboard statistics appeared negative. Traditional oversight requires detailed artifacts at the beginning of a program, such as cost estimates and strategic plans, while Agile methods advocate an incremental analysis. One official stated that requiring these artifacts early can be challenging because it can be more worthwhile to start with a high-level cost estimate and vision or roadmap that gets updated as the solution is more refined through each iteration, rather than spending time estimating costs and strategies that may change. Chapter 6 discusses how program milestones and reviews can be aligned to an Agile cadence and other concerns related to contracting for Agile programs. Furthermore, officials stated that program status tracking in Agile did not align with traditional methods. For example, one official stated that tracking the level of effort using story points instead of the traditional estimating technique based on hours was a challenge because team members were not used to that estimation method. 1. Officials stated that the required use of earned value management can be onerous if there is no guidance on how to adapt earned value management to reflect data about iteration progress, or if the organization as upper management does not embrace an Agile mindset and tracks monthly changes in cost, schedule, and product scope as control problems rather than as revisions to be expected during the iterative process. Chapter 7 of this guide discusses the application of performance management systems such as earned value management to Agile programs. Actions taken to address challenges. Since 2012, the federal government has taken steps to improve its policies and processes to help federal agencies adapt their current processes to Agile methods. Thank you for visiting with us today. Remember to send in any questions you may have. Do hit the like button to offer support and subscribe to our channel to learn more about Agile. Chapter 3 Agile Adoption Best Practices. Transitioning to Agile software development methods requires practitioners to do more than implement new or modify existing tools, practices, and processes. Converting to Agile requires adopting the values and principles of the Agile Manifesto, which introduces challenges as an organization shifts from waterfall development methods to those of an iterative process, such as Agile, which emphasizes rapid, frequent delivery of production quality software. Yet, an Agile approach also presents an opportunity for an organization to improve its acquisition and development of software. Organizations can use the best practices described in this chapter to help them manage and mitigate the challenges in making the transition to Agile. The practices described are organized by functional perspective, team dynamics and activities, program operations, and organization environment. The discussion is in general terms in order to be useful regardless of the Agile method used. The practices highlight the aspects of Agile adoption that address key risks to be considered and are not meant to encompass all aspects of software development or program management. They can be used alone or in conjunction with information from other publications that address similar topics. This chapter assumes that a team, program, and organization has carefully chosen to adopt Agile software development methods. The decision to adopt Agile will depend on a multitude of factors, such as the stability of requirements, nature of the system, and program complexity. The best practice organization culture supports Agile methods discusses how to make a decision whether or not Agile is the best suited software development methodology for an organization's program. There are practices often associated with an Agile approach, such as prescribed roles, events, artifacts, and procedures, but these vary depending on the methodology used. Over time, teams may refine and evolve their practices based on experience and lessons learned. Because the adoption of Agile requires a shift in mindset at all levels of an organization, attempting to address all of the best practices at the same time can be difficult to manage and may lead to an inordinate amount of disruption and change in a short period of time. Therefore, management might consider prioritizing the best practices so that the most important have been implemented before moving on to the next set of practices. Prioritizing the order of adoption may result in an organization prioritizing individual practices from the group's team dynamics and activities, program operations, and organization environment of practices described in this chapter, rather than prioritizing an entire set of practices from any single group. Consistent with continuous improvement, some best practices will be more applicable to new adopters, while other practices will be more applicable to organizations with more experience using Agile. Within each Agile method, specific terms may not fully align with the terms used in the best practices discussed in this chapter. For example, a program might use a different term from the terms used in this guide to capture the concept of a product owner. Use of the specific terminology in this guide is not essential, but the concepts described in each best practice as a whole should be observable. If not, then organization officials should be able to explain why excluding a best practice or elements of one does not introduce unacceptable risk to transitioning to Agile. Although identified across varying levels, these best practices are highly interrelated. They all have to be aligned toward common goals and therefore, each support the success of other practices. Agile BEST practices. Agile Adoption Best Practice Summary. Team Dynamics and Activities. Team composition supports Agile methods. Agile teams are self-organizing. The role of the product owner is defined to support Agile methods. Work is prioritized to maximize value for the customer. Agile teams use user story ASA to define work. Agile teams estimate the relative complexity of user stories. Requirements are prioritized in a backlog based on value. Repeatable processes are in place. Agile programs employ continuous integration. Mechanisms are in place to ensure the quality of code being developed. Agile teams meet daily to review progress and discuss impediments. Agile teams perform end iteration demonstrations. Agile teams perform end iteration retrospectives. Program operations. Staff are appropriately trained in Agile methods. All members of an Agile team have appropriate training since techniques used are different from those used for waterfall development. Programs. Developers and all other supporting team members have the appropriate technical expertise needed to perform their roles. Technical environment enables Agile development. System design supports iterative delivery. Technical and program tools support Agile. Program controls are compatible with Agile. Critical features are defined and incorporated in development. Non-functional requirements are defined and incorporated in development. Agile teams maintain a sustainable development pace. Organization environment. Organization activities support Agile methods. Organization has established appropriate life cycle activities. Goals and objectives are clearly aligned. Organization culture supports Agile methods. Sponsorship for Agile development cascades throughout the organization. Sponsors understand Agile development. Organization culture supports Agile development. Incentives and rewards are aligned to Agile development methods. Organization acquisition policies and procedures support Agile methods. Guidance is appropriate for Agile. Best practice team composition supports Agile methods. Agile teams should be self-organizing, meaning they are empowered to collectively own the whole product and decide how work will be accomplished. The Agile team's duties should be well defined. E. Graham. Covering lower-level decision-making and team formation. The team's authorities should highlight the importance of cross-functionality to allow for autonomy and team stability. The more encouragement and latitude the team is given, the better it can address technical issues in creative ways. If teams are not self-organizing or self-managing, the teams may be inefficient, causing program cost increases and schedule slips. The Agile team should be structured to allow for its own autonomy so that it need not rely on outside teams to complete its work. Team members should have cross-functional skills that allow them to be capable of performing all of the work rather than a single specialty, and collectively the team should have all the skills necessary to perform the work and represent the various sections of the organization that touch on software development, such as business subject matter expertise, quality assurance, and cybersecurity. In addition, the team should be integrated with other areas in the program office. Specifically, the team can include contract specialists, designers, analysts, developers, and testers who, when working together, are able to decompose high-level descriptions of features that need to be accomplished into appropriate user stories and then work to identify logical iteration stopping points for testability. This level of expertise on the team allows it to solve most problems. If a team does not have the requisite skill sets, it will be reliant on other teams that may have other responsibilities, thus delaying progress on the product. The roles for an Agile team can vary based on the Agile methods being applied. However, certain roles are similar in all Agile environments, such as the developers, product owner, team facilitator, and subject matter experts. Team stability, where team members are dedicated to the team and do not move in and out of the team, is important to ensure consistent productivity. Frequently shifting resources within a team, or between teams, can undo learning and shift team dynamics and skills, thereby diminishing the team's ability to meet commitments. The level of commitment of each team member and stakeholder is based on the needs of the program and should be discussed on a case-by-case basis. For example, involvement of a database administrator may only be required on a part-time basis when the team is working on user stories that require access to, or may indirectly impact, a database. Whether a team member is fully or temporarily dedicated to a particular team, all staff should be available when needed to the extent possible. Thank you for visiting with us today. Remember to send in any questions you may have. Hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to learn more about Agile. The role of the product owner is defined to support Agile methods. In an Agile environment, the developers work daily with stakeholders, including the product owner. The product owner is the authoritative customer representative who manages the prioritization of the requirements. GAO user stories and acceptance criteria for those requirements, communicates operational concepts, and provides continual feedback to the developers as a representative of the customer. The product owner also defines the acceptance criteria for stories and ultimately decides if those criteria have been met. A product owner should understand the business and strategic values of the organization and possess subject matter expertise related to the business need in order to draw alignment with the vision of the product. Linking the need, vision, and product includes ensuring that prioritized requirements are evaluated and implemented in a timely manner and that the backlog is managed. If there is not a clearly identified product owner who is the authoritative customer representative and responsible for managing requirements prioritization, communicating operational concepts, and providing continual feedback, the developers may not be sure which requirements are priorities if they receive conflicting information. This uncertainty can result in delays to delivering high-priority features and deployment of the overall system. If the product owner is not a dedicated resource, the developers may find that person unavailable to answer questions when needed, and, if questions are not addressed in a timely manner, the developers may make assumptions in order to continue with its development and meet its commitments. If the team assumptions do not match the expectations of the product owner, significant rework may be necessary. This can slow down the development process. The product owner role and responsibilities can be fulfilled in more than one way. For example, some organizations may delegate these responsibilities through multiple product owners, each of whom has clear boundaries and a clear division of duties, while other organizations may establish a core group of business officials to make key programmatic decisions, with a single product owner interacting with the Agile teams on behalf of the group. Regardless of the structure, the product owner should be empowered and their responsibilities should be well defined. GAO the product owner's availability to the team. From a functional perspective, a product owner must be empowered to prioritize decisions about development. Without the ability to reprioritize work, the development process can slow down due to waiting on others with competing responsibilities to consider and respond on behalf of the business. Since the product owner represents the customer, they routinely interact with key stakeholders to weigh the value of each requirement and establish work priorities for the developers. The developers may choose to interact directly with key stakeholders if the Agile team deems it warranted. However, the team should ensure that functionality is prioritized by the product owner and not the stakeholders, and that this additional coordination does not impact development productivity. In order for a product owner to be effective, their responsibilities should be reduced so as to limit the number of Agile teams the product owner works with and allow time to interact with and complete duties with the team, stakeholders, and the customers. Without maintaining contact with both the developers and the customers, a product owner may not be able to represent what the customer priorities are and may misrepresent them to the developers. This could result in a decreased value from the system if the wrong features are given priority in the backlog or cause schedule delays if critical features were not developed. Case Study 3 Product Owner, from immigration benefits system. In 2016, GAO found the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services USCIS transformation program experienced many challenges due to product owners being stretched among multiple development teams. Product owners for the primary transformation program system, the Electronic Immigration System (ELIS), were responsible for more than 4 development teams, and, at times, up to 12 teams. Consolidated release assessments, prior product owner testimony, and GAO observations identified that not having a dedicated product owner presented many difficulties for the ELIS development teams. For example, one product owner stated that it was a challenge to accommodate more than one team and she had to stagger her time between the teams to support sprint planning and maintain meaningful dialogue with the team. Additionally, consolidated release assessments indicated that product owners did not attend 21% of sprint planning meetings. Product owner availability was an issue voiced by development team members and also observed by GAO during stand-up meetings and sprint planning. The more development teams a product owner is responsible for, the less time the product owner is able to spend with each team. Consequently, this can impact product owner effectiveness in performing his or her assigned duties. Furthermore, as we reported in 2016, the program faced challenges in completing work within committed time frames, and product owner availability may have been a contributing factor. According to USCIS guidance, lack of inclusion and transparency with the development team's decision-making and processes can result in a disengaged product owner, or one that makes decisions without adequate consideration of challenges faced by the team. Best practice work is prioritized to maximize value for the customer. Agile teams use user stories to define work. User stories have become a common method of defining small items of work that can be completed by team members inside of an iteration. Although some methods do not explicitly require the use of user stories e.g., Kanban, they provide additional information beyond the high-level requirement description to help Agile teams work to meet the requirement. A user story defines who needs the requirement and why. Regardless of the form used to communicate low-level requirements, ensuring that the team knows who the requirement's customer is and why the requirement is needed are important. While Agile programs may use different terminology, such as product backlog items, for the purposes of this guide, we will use the term user story throughout to describe a small segment of work that can be completed in a single iteration and is determined by the product owner and developers. The Agile team constructs a general outline for developing the user stories that comprise an iteration. The user story's focus is on the value delivered to the customer, often defines who the customer is, what is being developed for that customer, and why there is a need for the functionality. However, striking a balance between too much and not enough detail can be challenging. Each user story should provide enough detail to allow developers to estimate the user story's complexity, but not so much information that there is little room for discussion between the product owner and the developers around the intent of the user story. Clearly establishing the components to include in the user story can help strike this balance. Establishing a common structure for the user story helps ensure consistency and can help prevent delays when product owners work with multiple teams or teams are reorganized. The product owner determines the business value of each user story in consultation with the developers by refining the size, defining the criteria for acceptance, and establishing when the user story will be considered to be done. The value of a user story should be reevaluated based on the current needs of the organization to ensure the greatest return on investment. The practice of backlog refinement, along with a discussion of acceptance criteria and a definition of done, is covered in greater detail in Chapter 5. INVEST. The acronym INVEST defines the characteristics of a quality user story. It should be independent of all others, and negotiable, not a specific contract for features. Be valuable or vertical, estimable to a good approximation, as small so as to fit within an iteration, and testable in principle, even if there is not a test for it yet. If the user story fails to meet one of these criteria, the team may want to reword it or even consider a rewrite. The developers should use relative estimation, which compares the current work with work of similar size and complexity to determine how much complexity a new user story represents. Relative estimation enables teams to maintain a sustainable software development pace and predict work commitments. The team should size user stories relative to one another, assess the complexity of work based on input from the product owner, refine user stories and estimates over time, and use prior estimates to inform future estimates. If teams are not using relative estimation to compare current size and work estimates to historical completed work, the team may underestimate or overestimate the complexity and time necessary to complete the user story. Relative estimation in software development, an estimate traditionally consists of a quantified valuation of the effort necessary to carry out a given development task. This is most often expressed in terms of duration. Relative estimation is one of several types of estimation used by Agile teams. It consists of estimating tasks or user stories, not separately and in absolute units of time, but by comparison or by grouping of items of equivalent difficulty. Relative estimation, consistent with estimation in units other than time, avoids some of the pitfalls associated with estimating in general, seeking unwarranted precision, confusing estimates for commitments. For example, if a team uses a complexity point scale with the values 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, it should not be assumed that an 8 PT backlog item will require 4 times as long as a 2 PT 1, although, if that is the norm the team has agreed upon, it could. Rather, it will be more than a 5 PT and less than a 13 PT item. Also, because estimates are team and domain specific, there is little utility in attempting to use them for cross-team performance or productivity. When estimating, the team should consider potential factors that can increase the complexity of the work. For example, a piece of functionality that requires passing interface testing before it can be accepted might prove challenging when the team factors in coordination and access to other systems. Team members are providing only a best estimate based on experience to date and will not fully know the complexity of the user story until the work has begun. Accordingly, program management should remember that estimates for the program are likely to change with each iteration. Practices such as affinity estimation can help to identify factors that affect the complexity of a user story. Well-defined acceptance criteria can also help teams estimate a user story's complexity. Less well-defined user stories will carry more risk and uncertainty around size estimates. Additionally, if teams are not estimating user stories consistently, the teams may be committing to too much work, leading to user stories lasting longer than one iteration and team burnout. The team continually revises the estimates of the program as they learn more about the business priorities and as a user story increases in priority. However, once an iteration has begun, sizing estimates should remain unchanged so that the team can examine variances between estimated and actual work accomplished during the iteration. Estimation is a team-specific activity, and estimates for one team should not be compared against estimates for another. For example, different development teams on one program may have a different idea of what the relative size of work is. Requirements are prioritized in a backlog based on value. To prioritize a user story, the product owner determines the business value of each user story based on the needs of the customers, stakeholder priorities, and factors such as its risk level, dependent relationships, frequency of use, alignment with the vision of the product, security requirements, expected return on investment, and learning. The organization and program should have a shared understanding of what value means in terms of how much a feature satisfies strategic priorities. Identifying and measuring value, as with other Agile practices, requires constant collaboration. Agile teams should pull work from a prioritized backlog, providing frequent deliveries of software with immediate value to the customer. A lack of traceability between different levels of backlogs and program planning artifacts could lead to overlooking user stories or features that are critical to the program due to their high value to the customer or key dependencies that those user stories or features might have with other aspects of the system. Further, lack of understanding or insight into the methods used to measure value for user stories could cause a disconnect between the customer and developers and allow delivery of features that do not maximize the value. The value of the work accomplished by Agile teams should be tracked and monitored. Once software has been delivered, the product owner may survey customers to measure satisfaction with each software release and track the accuracy of initial value estimates. Value-driven feature development. One way to gauge the value of work is to measure how often a feature of a system is used by the customer. While there may be situations where a critical feature is necessary but used infrequently, often the product owner should be focused on developing features that will actually be used on deployment and therefore are of immediate value. As with any measure, setting a target for usage beforehand can serve as a benchmark to compare against on deployment. The team should provide an ongoing assessment of value expected versus value delivered. In doing so, the organization has another measure of progress beyond traditional cost or schedule considerations. Without clearly prioritizing work, the developers could work on features that are not must-haves to the customer, resulting in the delivery of features that may not be used and might contribute to schedule and cost fronts. MOSCO. Many Agile methods use the acronym MOSCO to classify user stories as must-have, should have, could have, or would like to have for prioritizing the backlog. Case study for release roadmap from Agile software development. In June 2020, GAO reported that the Department of Homeland Security (DHS) modified its acquisition procedures to allow for an ongoing assessment of progress and indirectly the value of work accomplished via a release roadmap. DHS guidance stated that the release roadmap is to be submitted to the Acquisition Review Board prior to acquisition decision event to be. During lower-level technical reviews, exit criteria for reviews required the development team to follow the release roadmap and make adjustments that supported the successful completion of requirements defined at the acquisition decision event to be. DHS supplemented these requirements with guidance on constructing a roadmap, including a discussion on how a program can sequence its roadmap for learning, risk, and economic value. Within DHS, GAO reported that it reviewed a roadmap for one development module of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE Student and Exchange Visitor Information System SEVIS program. This roadmap listed areas for development in the order they were intended to be developed and identified the associated business capabilities. The business capabilities identified in the roadmap aligned with the sub-capabilities listed in the program's operational requirements document. Examples of business capabilities in the roadmap that were also sub-capabilities identified in the operational requirements document included: create non-immigrant record including supporting forms, align non-immigrant eligibility information with unique non-immigrant, update non-immigrant biographical information, and add update dependent information. Still ONTHE topic OF value. Because the value of requirements is constantly fluctuating based on the state of the program and the organization, the product owner reevaluates requirements frequently to reprioritize if necessary as a result of team discussions. Doing so allows customers to receive the most important functionality (GRAM). Those features that provide the greatest value first. Likewise, this practice usually provides the biggest return on investment for the work performed. Moving on to storyboard mapping. User story mapping, a concept first formulated by Jeff Patton in 2005 in an article entitled It as All in How You Slice It, consists of ordering user stories along to independent mentions. The map arranges user activities along the horizontal axis in rough order of priority or the order in which you would describe activities to explain the behavior of the system. Down the vertical axis, it represents increasing sophistication of the implementation. Working through successive rows fleshes out the product with additional functionality. One intent of this practice is to avoid a failure of incremental delivery, where a product could be released that is composed of features that, in principle, are of high business value, but are unusable because they are functionally dependent on features that are of lower value and, therefore, deferred to future releases. Thank you for visiting with us today. Remember to send in any questions you may have. Hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to learn more about Agile. Moving on to another best practice section. Best practice repeatable processes are in place. Agile programs employ continuous integration. To successfully meet the demands of rapid development, Agile teams use repeatable processes to establish consistency, thus providing a baseline against which improvements can be evaluated and adapted. Repeatable processes are not to impede the creativity of the Agile team by repeating the same steps in the same way every time the team operates. Rather, they characterize how to approach the Agile cadence. Because iterations are short, often to 2-4 weeks in duration, consistency is important as practices will be repeated dozens of times a year. Automation of repeatable processes allows software components that are added or modified to be continuously integrated into the system. With short iterations in which to develop working software, integration should be frequent. Thus, continuous integration using automation ensures that software handoffs between the various stages of development and testing are performed in a reliable, dependable manner. Without continuous integration using automation, reliable, dependable software handoffs may not occur. Each stage of the continuous integration process should include automated tests of both functional and non-functional requirements with the scope of automated testing tracked and monitored based on established expectations. Without automated build and testing tools, the program may experience challenges in delivering the product on time and may have a limited assurance of product quality. Because automation depends on early investments in the technical environment, its success is heavily dependent on the program process. Best practice, technical environment enables agile development. When using Agile, check that mechanisms are in place to ensure the quality of code being developed, adherence to coding standards, and the use of automated and manual testing are necessary for improving the quality code that is ultimately inserted into the continuous integration build process. Software with a large number of defects or an inefficient structure not only affects system performance, it forces the developers to spend critical time and effort to repair defects. While many methods are available for assuring code quality, there will always be some code inefficiencies or redundancies that ultimately limit system performance. These deficiencies can stem from time constraints and unsustainable pace of development, undisciplined coders, or other reasons. The accumulation of these deficiencies over time is called technical debt and can present obstacles to an agile program if not properly managed. For example, as a code base grows, additional functions will rely on the deficient code, causing a degradation in overall system performance. Moreover, as the interest incurred on technical debt continues to rise, teams will devote more time to cleaning up errors instead of producing new features. Technical debt can also be incurred mindfully. When it is more important to hypothesize the way a module will work in the eventual system so that interfaces can be tested, for example, than to wait for the requirements for that part of the system to be written in detail. Eventually, both intentional and unintentional technical debt can increase to the point where the code base no longer functions properly and a complete refresh becomes necessary. Code quality should be tracked and monitored based on established expectations. There are various methods that can be used to assure code quality. 1. Development is test-driven. Test cases are written before any code has been produced, and only enough code should be produced to address the test case. Subsequent test cases and code are added via a cyclical process until the user story is finished. 2. Pair programming. Developers work in pairs. 3. Refactoring. A portion of time is set aside in each iteration to update and improve the code. 4. Code quality and peer review. A team member who is not the developer of the code reviews portions of the code base to assess its quality and adherence to defined coding standards. Another best practice is Agile teams meet daily to review progress and discuss impediments. In addition to repeatable technical practices, there are repeatable business practices that increase the likelihood a team will succeed when using Agile methods for its software development. Specifically, teams can meet daily to coordinate the work, demonstrate working software to the product owner either during or at the end of an iteration to verify it meets customer needs, or participate in a retrospective meeting. The daily progress meeting is to discuss any barriers encountered in completing the work. It is not intended to provide a status update to management. Its purpose is to help the team gauge if it is on track to meet the iteration goals and adjust as necessary, while holding team members accountable. Daily meetings usually discuss these three topics: yesterday's accomplishments toward the iteration goals, today's planned work to advance the iteration goals, and any impediments to achieving the iteration goals that need to be removed. The larger purpose of the discussion is to help a team meet its stated goals for an iteration and increase the flow of work. Without the daily stand-up meeting, team members may not be held accountable for their work. In addition, duplication of work could occur, or work may not get accomplished because of a lack of communication and understanding of who is doing what for the program. Without daily stand-up meetings, the team might also not identify impediments, which may result in rework or schedule delays. Managers can observe the daily meeting and consider actions they might take to help remove team impediments, but the daily meeting should not become a status update for management. If used as a status update for management instead of focusing on progress and impediments, the meeting could last too long. The meeting is also not a place to solve problems or hold discussions with stakeholders. Instead, it is a place to decide what conversations with what participants need to take place that day. Teams can invite subject matter experts or other business stakeholders to the meeting as needed to answer questions regarding a specific user story they intend to work on that day. Thank you for visiting with us today. Remember to send in any questions you may have. Hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to learn more about Agile. Another best practice is that Agile teams perform end iteration demonstrations. Teams should demonstrate the latest version of the software for the product owner and other stakeholders at the end of each iteration or as functionality has been completed. These demonstrations offer an opportunity for stakeholders to validate that teams are building the right product, help inform the priorities for the team moving forward, and offer a key opportunity to discover new requirements that can be translated into user stories. During a demonstration, stakeholders review and react to the particular portion of working software being demonstrated, rather than to the whole system. In order for a demonstration to be useful, all participants must be engaged, and the sample software should be depicted in a realistic setting. Teams should not spend a significant amount of time preparing for a demonstration, as the focus of this time is to demonstrate working software and obtain feedback. If end iteration demonstrations are not performed, the team may not be able to identify portions of the software that need improvement or modifications to provide the anticipated functionality. Another best practice is that Agile teams perform end iteration retrospectives. At the end of each iteration, the team should hold a retrospective meeting to reflect on what went well and what could be improved for the next iteration. It is an effective tool to enable continuous process improvement. The findings of the retrospective are determined and implemented by the team. For example, although retrospectives focus on process improvements instead of product improvements, the team can include action items from the retrospective as user stories in the backlog and track their implementation. If a retrospectives is not held at the end of each iteration, the team may not reflect on or improve the efficiency and effectiveness of its work processes, thereby impacting the timely delivery of a high-quality product. These retrospectives differ from end-of-project retrospectives in that they provide the opportunity to improve in the next iteration, not the next project. Program-level Agile IN operations (AND) programs IS critical TOO. At the program level, best practices address training staff in Agile methods, establishing a technical environment that facilitates Agile development, and implementing controls that are compatible with Agile. All members of a team using Agile methods need to have appropriate training. Since the techniques used are different from those used for waterfall development programs, team members and all staff who will be actively developing software, supporting software development activities, or involved in the acquisition process using Agile should be trained in the specific Agile method they will be using in order to have a common understanding about the processes to be used. Training in specific Agile methods includes the Agile policy and procedures documented by the organization. Without training, there may be a lack of common understanding in the program about the Agile methods to be used. In addition, training requirements should be tracked and monitored for all team members. Refresher training should occur whenever there are any changes to the development or acquisition process, such as the use of new programming languages, applications, compliance requirements, coding, or security standards. If Agile is adopted throughout an organization, training of all team members should be considered as part of the organization's larger workforce training or strategic human capital management efforts. Without effective training based on a strategic human capital analysis, the program will be challenged in helping to ensure that the required capabilities and mission value will be delivered in a timely and cost-effective manner. Developers and all other supporting team members should have the appropriate technical expertise needed to perform their roles. In addition to training, teams using Agile methods should possess the competencies, skills, knowledge, and process abilities needed to perform their role. A program should consider Agile-centric skills when forming teams. Ideally, team members, including contract specialists, developers, and testers, should be cross-functional and together possess all the skills needed to produce working software. As discussed in the best practice, team composition supports Agile methods. If team members do not have all the required skills, programs should ensure that each developer has immediate access to people with specialized skills in, for example, contracting, architecture, database administration, software development, quality assurance, operations, information security, risk analysis, user experience, and business systems analysis. Having qualified staff helps ensure that the flow of development is continuous. If program development is performed by an Agile services contractor, program officials should include an evaluation of the qualifications of the contractor to perform the work as part of the source selection. For example, on receipt of contractor proposals, a program may require the offerors to conduct a technical demonstration of their expertise. An Agile team needs to have all the appropriate technical expertise, or it could be delayed in completing its work while waiting on input from knowledgeable specialists outside of the team. Moreover, if individual team members are not proficient in the skills necessary to complete the work, then the quality of the product being developed may suffer, requiring substantial RE work. Case Study 5 Technical Demonstrations from Agile Software Development. In June 2020, GAO reported that the Department of Homeland Security (DHS) offered guidance for preparing acquisition strategies through its Procurement Innovation Lab. Webinars offered by the Procurement Innovation Lab on acquisition strategies for Agile programs discussed the need for interim delivery of software, close coordination between contractors and program office staff, contract oversight mechanisms that were tailored to support agile development and refined requirements. For example, the Transportation Security Administration Agile Services Procurement webinar discussed planning, executing, and debriefing technical demonstrations used to select the contract recipient, paying particular attention to the value of transparency and modifying contract oversight mechanisms. GAO reported that, within DHS, the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE Student and Exchange Visitor Information System SEVIS program evaluated contractor qualifications to ensure they had the necessary technical expertise. According to the program manager, contractor qualifications were evaluated in 2 stages. First, by assessing the contractor's proposal, and second, by conducting a technical challenge to ensure that contractors could demonstrate the technical skills in the proposal. According to the instructions included in the request for proposals, this technical challenge required the contractor to leverage Agile best practices to design, develop, and demonstrate working software that addressed user stories provided by the program. Although the instructions stated that contractors were required to follow Agile methods, the ICE SEVIS program manager stated that the primary goal of the technical challenge was to assess development skills rather than knowledge of Agile. Moving on. Bear in mind that system design supports iterative delivery planning. The design of the system is important in order to understand and manage the considerations that can enable a loose coupling of architecture components and to provide architecture to support the Agile methods and end state for the program. An Agile program should refine and build out the architecture over time as it learns more about the system, but also allow time to consider system requirements in order to limit future complexity, rework, and loss of investment. If the program does not consider the system architecture during its initial planning and instead relies on building out the architecture as code is developed, the architecture may not support the needs of the system when fully operational and require a complete technical refresh. Let us briefly discuss the concept of an architectural runway. Some programs use the concept of an architectural runway to ensure that the technical infrastructure, dependencies, and interfaces are clearly understood and in place to support implementing the near-term software in an operational environment. The architectural runway is continually extended to meet new and evolving needs in front of development, which avoids the need for large, upfront architectural design. In designing the system, a loosely structured architecture allows for the rapid development of modular components in incremental releases. From an Agile perspective, this allows teams to produce usable code at each iteration without impacting the larger system, as the architecture provides the platform for new code to be inserted seamlessly into the operational environment. In addition, since large federal programs typically have staff distributed across multiple locations, it is easier for each team to be responsible for a module. This module is then loosely coupled with others, eliminating the need for many point-to-point interfaces that would require significant communication and collaboration between teams. Frequent testing and reviews can help ensure that newly developed components are properly integrated with existing ones. Incremental code delivery can result in more frequent customer reviews that provide valuable feedback to the developers. Because customers are reviewing smaller slices of the system than in a typical waterfall development, the staff members participating in an Agile development review are likely to be different than those in a waterfall development. If software design and architecture are not loosely coupled, changes to individual pieces of the system may require a significant amount of testing of the entire system, slowing the pace of development and delivery of the product. Thank you for visiting with us today. Remember to send in any questions you may have. Hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to learn more about Agile. Let's move on to our next case study. Case Study 6 Tools for Automated Testing and Continuous Integration from Agile Software Development. In June 2020, GAO reported that the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE Student and Exchange Visitor Information System SEVIS program defined its technical environment to include technical tools for automated testing and continuous integration. The Team Process Agreement for one development module GAO reviewed identified technical tools that supported continuous integration and testing within the project's technical environment. This included a tool known as Jenkins for continuous integration and tools known as Munit and SOAP-UI for continuous testing. In addition, the ICE SEVIS Modernization Test and Evaluation Master Plan discussed tools for helping to ensure code quality, such as an automated code analytics tool to be used to identify test coverage of code and cybersecurity code vulnerabilities. The project also defined management support tools in the process agreement. Specifically, it identified support tools for tracking and knowledge management, such as JIRA and Confluence. The Team Process Agreement stated that JIRA should be the main knowledge management tool and that all changes, discussion, and history should be tracked in each ticket. This process agreement also stated that JIRA should be the team's tracking tool with Confluence used to provide transparency. Moving on to this next best practice, technical and program tools support Agile to continually monitor progress. Agile program management and technical tools may be needed to assist Agile teams with electronically managing the Agile framework they are using to develop software. The selected tools should be integrated into the program's technology environment. GRAM. Automated regression testing suites and continuous integration support tools and access should be available to all team members and stakeholders who need the access. These electronic tools can prevent delays in performing critical tasks. If technical and program tools are not consistently available to those members of the team requiring access, then the productivity of developers may suffer and result in increased costs for development. Organizations sometimes face limited access to the contractor's tools. This is based on a perception that providing access could lead to micromanagement of the developers. This fear of micromanagement should be addressed because everyone involved in the Agile development effort, both organization and contractor, should have access to the data. Given the variety of Agile tools available in the commercial market, program managers should analyze their current suite of program management tools to determine to what extent they are aligned with Agile principles and practices. Since Agile methods deliver software frequently, they require a certain degree of automation to avoid creating lags in the process. For example, to ensure quality products are produced during a delivery cycle, the software is integrated and tested frequently, usually daily. This rapid integration and testing can be labor-intensive without the support of automated tools. Automation also reduces the chance of human errors and can perform many functions much faster than people can. Large programs not using automated tracking tools could miss key dependencies between user stories and features. Without automated tools, the program risks inconsistent implementation of processes across teams, which may negatively affect product delivery and understanding the program's progress. Best practice program controls are compatible with Agile. It is important that critical features are defined and incorporated in development. The program strategy should identify the mission, architecture, safety-critical components, and dependencies that ensure that all aspects of a program are considered, and these aspects should be revisited on a regular basis. 38 Some programs define these components during an initial iteration before any software development begins. Doing so can help the program avoid rework and integration challenges from inadequate software and the resulting increase in costs and time to deliver all critical features. Without clearly identifying mission and system-critical architecture features, the program risks developing these features after other software is in place and facing substantial rework and integration challenges, necessarily increasing the cost and time to deliver all critical features. In determining the criticality of the software, the program should evaluate and prioritize the relative value of the work to ensure that each iteration delivers the most business value. This can ensure that the customer's most pressing needs are being met first. Business and mission goals drive the prioritization of the most advantageous requirements, and security requirements should be reviewed throughout development. At the same time, the product owner must consider technical risk relative to business and mission goals, and if there are significant unknowns, those features may need to be addressed early to understand what is actually achievable versus what is desired. The program may need to pivot if technology assumptions are made in the program's conception that are not reasonable for the cost allowed or the state of the technology that must be used. If critical business requirements are not prioritized appropriately, software may not provide the required functionality. Lack of communication between the product owners and developers regarding features priorities risks the development of non-critical software in place of critical software and lower customer satisfaction with the completed product. Next practice non-functional requirements are defined and incorporated in development. Although much of the focus in development is on functional needs, the program must also include non-functional requirements such as security and privacy in the program strategy. 39 As with critical dependencies, continuous attention to technical excellence and good design requires the developers to consider non-functional requirements throughout development. This is particularly true with complex programs such as healthcare and financial systems that process sensitive data with complex non-functional requirements. Teams overlooking non-functional requirements may develop a system that does not comply with current federal regulations e.g. cybersecurity or interface requirements for IT programs, causing unnecessary risks to business operations and resulting in the software not becoming operational until these components have been addressed. See Chapter 5 for additional discussion on defining and capturing non-functional requirements. Next practice Agile teams maintain a sustainable development pace. Management should strive to ensure that teams can maintain a sustainable development pace by prioritizing user stories, some of which may be non-functional requirements, establishing an agreed-upon definition of done for those user stories, and reaching a mutual commitment on the work to be accomplished for each iteration. Many teams embrace Agile methods because the software is needed quickly. However, sound engineering and management principles are still required when employing Agile. Management should emphasize and encourage teams to maintain a consistent development pace that can be sustained indefinitely. For this to happen, management needs to encourage and promote how this paradigm will benefit everyone. Specifically, teams that can determine a reasonable pace will not suffer from burnout and will take pride in their ability to continually produce quality software that pleases the customer. If teams are not working at a sustainable pace, there is a risk of burnout, which can cause delays in the program. In addition, working at a sustainable pace provides management with historical data, such as the team velocity, that can provide for more accurate cost estimates and time to develop desired features. While an effective measure if collected and interpreted properly, it is important that management understand velocity is team-specific and should not be compared across multiple teams. Chapter 7 provides additional information related to specific Agile program monitoring and control, and Chapter 8 addresses the various metrics that can be captured to monitor performance. In addition, Appendix V discusses the Scrum and XP methods for achieving a sustainable pace and how it can be planned for and monitored over the program's life. Without establishing a consistent pace, the program cannot reliably use historical metrics, such as team velocity, to estimate future efforts required in product development. Moving on, Organization environment best practices address organization life cycle activities, culture, and acquisition policy and procedures. Although not explicitly called out as a best practice, an organization may also be responsible for directing, monitoring, and/or controlling the implementation of program operations and team activities and dynamics. Best practices related to these topics will be discussed later in this guide. Organizations all have different missions, goals, existing processes, culture, and requirements. Consequently, they may adopt different and varying levels of Agile methods to suit their needs. Before beginning the process of scaling Agile, management will select or develop a suitable approach that might include using a pilot program to discover problems and then mature its processes and incorporate lessons learned before fully adopting them throughout the organization. An organization may have to consider a possible reorganization to enable a large-scale transformation to Agile software development. This can be simple, such as reviewing traditional roles and responsibilities and realigning them with Agile roles, that is, program manager to product owner, or it can be more complicated, resulting in intensive changes, such as structuring one or more components or shifting entire IT portfolios. One way to help ease an organization's reorganization is for management to establish communities of practice or other working groups of motivated or influential individuals to lead the change. Another is to use small pilot programs to showcase success and learn first where the organization's pain points exist before scaling Agile across the organization. Either a top-down or bottom-up approach can be successful in scaling Agile and helping to drive an organization's change. Best practice organization activities support Agile methods. Organization has established appropriate life cycle activities. The organization's life cycle activities should support the iterative and incremental nature of an Agile approach. They should also allow for the organization to tailor life cycle activities to encourage frequent collaboration between the customer and the developers to support rapid development. When making the transition to Agile, Sponsors may need to make structural changes at the organization level in order to support the iterative nature of Agile. These changes include allowing programs that are applying Agile methods to tailor life cycle activities, including technical reviews and associated artifacts, to their cadence of delivery. These changes may affect the organization, staffing, and interactions with other groups such as information assurance and operational test and evaluation. If programs are unable to tailor life cycle activities, then the organization's oversight process could negatively affect the cadence established by the Agile team, resulting in less predictable development efforts. The organization's life cycle must also allow for refining detailed requirements. The highest priority of federal IT programs is to satisfy customers through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. In order for the mission to succeed, federal organizations' acquisition policy in small deployments. There must be frequent collaboration between the organization and the developers so that the most valuable work is always completed first. If collaboration is not occurring regularly, then priorities regarding requirements will not be known and the result may not meet the program's vision or customer's needs. Programs can respond to changing business needs when early requirements are defined at a level high enough that the program or organization can fine-tune or modify the requirements to reflect a better understanding of what is needed. See Chapter 5 for a discussion of requirements decomposition. Organizations can do this by considering whether refined policies and procedures governing life cycle activities and oversight allow for lower-level requirements to be refined and the speed with which updated work can be approved. For example, in determining the appropriateness of the life cycle activities associated with using Agile methods, an organization can state in policy that satisfaction of the customer is the main focus and accommodating refining requirements is acceptable. See Chapter 7 for further discussion of how to monitor changing requirements with respect to cost, schedule, and scope commitments. Where detailed requirement refinement is not understood or defined at an organization level, the adoption and full realization of the benefits from Agile methods will be difficult to achieve. And guidance need to allow for refining detailed requirements while maintaining the high-level program vision and frequently delivering value in small deployments. There must be frequent collaboration between the organization and the developers so that the most valuable work is always completed first. If collaboration is not occurring regularly, then priorities regarding requirements will not be known and the result may not meet the program's vision or customer's needs. Programs can respond to changing business needs when early requirements are defined at a level high enough that the program or organization can fine-tune or modify the requirements to reflect a better understanding of what is needed. See Chapter 5 for a discussion of requirements decomposition. Organizations can do this by considering whether refined policies and procedures governing life cycle activities and oversight allow for lower-level requirements to be refined and the speed with which updated work can be approved. For example, in determining the appropriateness of the life cycle activities associated with using Agile methods, an organization can state in policy that satisfaction of the customer is the main focus and accommodating refining requirements is acceptable. See Chapter 7 for further discussion of how to monitor changing requirements with respect to cost, schedule, and scope commitments. Where detailed requirement refinement is not understood or defined at an organization level, the adoption and full realization of the benefits from Agile methods will be difficult to achieve. Goals and objectives are clearly aligned. A proven method for nurturing a strong relationship among customers, the developers, and the organization is to align program goals with strategic IT objectives and to ensure that program goals clearly reflect stakeholder needs and concerns. While this alignment is important in non-agile settings, its urgency in an agile environment derives from the fact that software will be available earlier to test and interact with other parts of the system. To effectively implement agile processes, the organization's mission or strategic goals are key inputs for decision-making. If the organization's goals are not clear or do not adequately reflect stakeholder concerns and mission needs, then lower-level decision-making may be misaligned with the organization's focus. This misalignment can, in turn, erode trust and often results in overbearing governance and bureaucracy, leading to delays. While a program may need to build trust with developers, the organization needs to trust that the program office can properly manage itself through delegation and more targeted governance. Additionally, it is important that the organization's software-related goals are clearly aligned with its program goals. The continuous delivery of working software depends, for example, on systems engineers and quality assurance teams having sufficient resources to respond to repeated software deliveries. If these software-specific needs are not considered to be part of the larger program goals, then the implementation of software applications may not fulfill minimum requirements established by the organization or by the federal government. In determining whether software, program, and organization goals and objectives are strongly aligned, an organization should collect objective measures such as data from roadmaps and product portfolios that are well-defined. These measures should be clearly communicated to the entire organization so that stakeholders, sponsors, customers, and developers know exactly which features and capabilities have been achieved according to the goals and objectives. Doing so will not only allow an organization to regularly track its productivity, but will also determine how an individual program fits into the organization's portfolio and mission. If approved program goals do not align with both the IT and business goals, then lower-level decision-making runs the risk of being misaligned with the organization's focus. Chapter 8 provides a detailed discussion of metrics and their use in continuous improvement of organization processes. Finally, goals should be clear, but not static. Many organizations adopt Agile precisely because it allows for rapid response to changes in either the external or internal environment. This rapid change makes it even more important that an organization effectively and routinely ensures that program goals are clearly communicated. Moving on to another best practice organization culture supports Agile methods in most organizations. Adopting Agile methods involves new behaviors and a different mindset. This is a major shift in how an organization operates and will affect the overall climate. For some agencies, the life cycle management process for an IT system includes not just the program office, but also outside support functions that are shared across the organization, such as certification and accreditation or operational test and evaluation. Policies and regulations can make it difficult to include these areas when adopting Agile. However, cascading sponsorship helps ease these problems by having advocates in many places within the organization who can model new Agile values and behavior, thereby instilling confidence in the people who are actively trying to adopt the new practices. Thank you for visiting with us today. Remember to send in any questions you may have. Hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to learn more about Agile. Sponsorship for Agile development cascades throughout the organization. Implementing Agile requires that stakeholders and sponsors embrace and fully understand the implications of this approach. Without high-level encouragement, Agile implementation might become a paperwork exercise, leading to a failure to complete software development. For example, without encouragement and commitment from upper-level management, Agile teams may not appropriately collaborate with product owners when they are unsure about the importance of certain functionality, causing confusion that ultimately can result in a poor product. Thus, functionality developed using a process that does not embrace an Agile mindset might require heavy investment in the post-deployment correction of errors or functionality enhancements to meet customer needs. Sponsorship for a program should start with senior stakeholders openly and explicitly supporting the use of Agile processes in the organization. One way to initiate a successful transition is to identify influential individuals within the organization who are interested in transformation and can become Agile champions. These champions may or may not be senior stakeholders, but should always be someone who has the respect of Agile adopters as well as the support of senior leaders. The champion's role is to help protect early Agile programs from being derailed by those who do not understand the new methods or are skeptical of change. Therefore, the strategy for winning over skeptics will be for the champion to demonstrate how programs have flourished under this new approach. Senior stakeholder sponsorship will be helpful to organizations in transitioning to Agile methods and help to ensure success with the use of Agile practices. Without sponsorship from senior stakeholders and the presence of an Agile champion or multiple champions, the organization may not embrace the transition, which can lead to inconsistent Agile practices and lackluster results. While having a clearly defined policy for Agile programs can be effective in many cases, using a policy or mandate to force adherence to Agile principles does not produce the healthy adoption of new practices. For example, putting policies in place too early before the appropriate transition mechanisms are solidified may lead to basic compliance but without consideration for the organization's culture and mindset change that should occur during a successful transition. Further, since Agile may not be appropriate for all programs, each program should consider its rationale for the use of an Agile approach in accordance with defined program and software goals. For example, the following could be considered indicators that a program is ready to adopt Agile practices, although this is not the only scheme for evaluating program readiness for Agile. Requirements are flexible. An established process is in place to further refine the requirements. Over time, an Agile champion or program sponsor is available to help the team overcome impediments. Customers and/or subject matter experts are readily available to provide feedback. Teams have been trained in a specific Agile framework or set of methods. A facilitator is available to assist teams in applying Agile methods. Supporting functions like contracting embrace organizational changes needed to make Agile work. The program is large with a variety of risks, particularly technological obsolescence, and teams desire more responsibility and ownership. Sponsors understand Agile development. Sponsors and champions should not only be assigned to enable an Agile transition. They should understand and be able to differentiate between traditional and Agile roles, Agile cadence, and processes. It is also important that they are accountable for results. Sponsors should be committed to supporting the specific Agile approach adopted so that processes are applied consistently across the organization. While the roles and responsibilities in a traditional acquisition are well documented in regulations, policies, and training documents, in an Agile environment they are more flexible and may not be as easily understood. One of the biggest obstacles to an Agile transformation can be that very few people in the organization know and understand Agile methods, or that they implement Agile based on limited experience and understanding of them. As a result, sponsors and senior stakeholders may need training and/or coaching regarding their new responsibilities. Organization policies, therefore, should require sponsors and senior stakeholders to be fully educated regarding Agile values and principles and committed to implementing the chosen Agile approach, and organizations should monitor completion of that training. In doing so, sponsors can then transmit or reinforce learning from their training to staff as needed. If sponsors are unable to effectively differentiate between waterfall and Agile implementation, they may hamper or impede the effective adoption of Agile principles, leading to a breakdown in processes. Moving ONTOTHENEXT section. Organization culture supports Agile development. In addition to senior stakeholder and policy support, certain physical and social environments should be provided by the organization to allow Agile teams to succeed. For example, Agile environments typically call for locating cross-functional teams in common areas where the teams can work together and converse regularly. Designating a team space for physically CO-located teams to work with appropriate network and IT access can be as simple as dedicating a conference room to the team for the duration of the program. Even if the teams are physically separated, modern communications and social media methods such as video teleconferences or instant messaging chats can be used to promote continuous discussion. For example, some distributed teams may establish a continuously open chat room where team members can talk about their work. Whether distributed or CO-located, the end goal is for all team members, including the product owner, to be immediately accessible to ensure questions are answered promptly and team pace is not delayed. To facilitate the delivery of a just-in-time product, a climate of trust should exist throughout the life cycle between the organization and the developers. However, since the federal acquisition environment is built on strong oversight, traditional acquisitions can often result in adversarial relationships between the acquirers and the developers. Conversely, in an Agile environment, a climate of trust, built by shared experiences in which all parties feel respected and accepted, is needed so that the program team can achieve its fullest potential. A first step toward developing trust between the developer and the organization could be a joint workshop or event that focuses on the effort but provides opportunities for working together across organization boundaries. Additionally, organizations should consider granting greater autonomy to Agile teams by providing them with the skills and knowledge necessary to succeed and an awareness of the long-term goals of the system. Another method to develop a climate of trust is to consider communication practices across groups and the amount of transparency coming from the organization, both bottom-up and top-down. For example, one option could be to make all artifacts that contribute to the development of the system broadly accessible to everyone associated with a program, including oversight boards. Availability of team message boards, instant messaging software, and other collaborative workspaces can facilitate such communication practices. This can be helped by having a process and terminology in place that are commonly understood in order to prevent misunderstanding. After Agile has been implemented, the organization can continue to learn and adapt from the feedback from key stakeholders and Agile teams. To do this requires continuous inspection and adaptation to improve the entire development process, such as in a more formal meeting, a retrospective, or an informal set of discussions among sponsors. In addition, ongoing demonstrations of working software can then serve as touchpoints where an oversight body can gain added assurance that the Agile teams are developing a system of value in line with its intentions. To effectively apply lessons learned, relevant, reliable data should be collected during the transition to help facilitate and support senior stakeholder adaptation and decision-making, since stakeholders are often moved from day-to-day Agile operations. In addition, modifications to appropriate policies and processes, such as systems engineering lifecycle documentation, will help ensure that needed changes to Agile practices and processes are effectively communicated and consistently applied throughout the organization. Establishing an environment supportive of Agile can aid team and program operations in meeting program goals. However, if an environment supportive to Agile methods is not in place, then team and program operations might not have the resources necessary to be successful, thus impeding delivery of the product and not meeting agreed-upon goals for cost, schedule, and performance. Incentives and rewards are aligned to Agile development methods. Open and explicit support by the senior stakeholders also means that traditionally rewarded behavior is no longer the norm. This is often one of the hardest concepts for senior stakeholders to consistently practice when advocating for change. Sponsorship from senior executives takes a step toward tangibly expressing this larger commitment and fostering an environment of trust. To that end, an organization should also examine its existing incentives and rewards systems and consider the extent to which they might interfere with or reinforce Agile behavior and make changes to bring those systems in alignment with Agile principles. Changes to incentives and rewards systems may be slow and ineffective, thus preventing team cohesion and unity and restricting productivity unless there is active involvement from the appropriate organization entities, such as human resources and employee unions. To ease the transition, organizations should identify and include such entities early and establish an organization goal to align related incentives and rewards with Agile values and principles. For example, one step to achieve such an environment and demonstrate support from senior stakeholders is to establish appropriate incentives to work on Agile teams and offer rewards to teams that satisfy business needs. That is, rewards should be tied to accomplishments Graham. Working software and not to the outputs of an Agile process. Most organizations have incentives and rewards that focus on individual accomplishments. However, in an Agile environment, incentives should be established to supplement traditional individual rewards with those that also focus on team success. For example, the reward system should be closely related to achieving software and program goals. If organization rewards are not structured to promote team performance, competitiveness, or a lack of respect among team members might increase, impacting team behavior, productivity, and outputs. The organization can use other mechanisms to reward team performance. For instance, rewards such as public acknowledgement by presenting a program's success story at conferences and other networking events and team access to certificate programs might be used to supplement individual-focused performance rewards. However, for such a rewards system to be effective, managers should understand the kinds of rewards that different individuals value and seek to reward successful teams accordingly. Structuring organization incentives to promote improved team performance and behavior will help productivity and outputs. Best practice organization acquisition policies and procedures support Agile methods. Guidance is appropriate for Agile acquisition strategies. The organization's Agile acquisition policy and guidance should align with the planned acquisition strategies. Before entering into any contract, the program office should analyze the risks, benefits, and costs associated with the acquisition. In a federal agency, this can be accomplished with acquisition planning as outlined in the Federal Acquisition Regulation (FAR) and other agency acquisition policy and guidance documents. For example, the Department of Defense has established the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement (FARS), which provides additional information for DoD programs as they implement the FAR. Additionally, FITARA grants the agency Chief Information Officer the authority to approve all information technology contracts, either directly or as part of active participation in agency governance. Mechanisms should also be in place in the contract and acquisition strategy to allow for close collaboration between the developers and stakeholders in order for everyone to agree on what features have the highest priority. In a commercial environment, the business workforce includes managers and customers of the product being developed. In the public sector, these roles may vary and span different organizations, not to mention the multiple business-related stakeholder roles to be allowed. These roles can include program office personnel, information assurance, logisticians, trainers, and others. Further, the overarching acquisition strategy should match the program's Agile cadence. While many contract types can be used to effectively support Agile development efforts, the way the contract is structured determines how effective it will be. Therefore, the contract structure and the acquisition strategy need to support Agile implementation, such as by allowing for interim demonstration and delivery between official releases. In addition, Agile program contracts should specify the cadence of delivery and to what extent product demonstrations will be relied on to obtain customer feedback. These agreements can be defined as contract deliverables in the contract data requirements lists. Accordingly, the contract should be structured to request frequent deliverables rather than milestones that span several months, taking care to ensure that the deliverables meet the requirements. However, requirements should be written in such a way as to allow the government representative reviewing the deliverables for acceptance (GAO). The technical team in coordination with the product owner enough flexibility to adjust requirements prioritization and the delivery schedule as the program evolves. If an acquisition strategy and contract structure do not allow for interim delivery and product demonstrations, then the organization may lose opportunities to obtain information and face challenges when adjusting requirements to meet and adapt to customer needs. This may negatively impact continuous delivery of software. Contracts should be structured to align oversight reviews with Agile practices (GAO). Frequent interim deliverables and product demonstrations frame the acquisition strategy to match the Agile cadence, allow for flexibility to refine detailed requirements, and encourage close collaboration between the developers and stakeholders. The organization contract oversight mechanisms should also be aligned with Agile practices. In the federal government, contracts for large acquisition programs often mandate document-centered capstone reviews such as preliminary design reviews and critical design reviews, which are based on an organization's policies and guidance governing the system development life cycle. These reviews analyze requirements, preliminary design, and detailed design documentation. Software coding does not typically begin until after all these documents have been approved following the critical design review. However, contracting language for Agile methods should enable incremental and frequent progress reviews at key points. If the organization does not adjust its oversight process to account for Agile methods, then there may not be adequate insight into the contractor's productivity may decrease. Moving on. Best practices checklist adoption of Agile methods. Team dynamics and activities. 1. Team composition supports Agile methods. Teams are self-organizing. The role of the product owner is defined to support Agile methods. 2. Work is prioritized to maximize value for the customer. Agile teams use user stories to define work. Agile teams estimate the relative complexity of user stories. Requirements are prioritized in a backlog based on value. 3. Repeatable processes are in place. Agile programs employ continuous integration. Mechanisms are in place to ensure the quality of the code being developed. Agile teams meet daily to review progress and discuss impediments. Agile teams observe end iteration demonstrations. Agile teams observe end iteration retrospectives. 4. Staff are appropriately trained in Agile methods. All program staff have appropriate training since the techniques used are different from those used for waterfall development programs. Developers and all other supporting team members have the appropriate technical expertise needed to perform their roles. 5. Technical environment enables Agile development. System design supports iterative delivery. Technical and program tools support Agile. 6. Program controls are compatible with Agile. Critical features are defined and incorporated in development. Non-functional requirements are defined and incorporated in development. Agile teams maintain a sustainable development pace. 7. Organization activities support Agile methods. Organization has established appropriate life cycle activities. Goals and objectives are clearly aligned. 8. Organizational culture supports Agile methods. Sponsorship for Agile development cascades throughout the organization. Sponsors understand Agile development. Organization has established an environment supportive of Agile development. Incentives and rewards are aligned to Agile development methods. 9. Organizational acquisition policies and procedures support Agile methods. Guidance is appropriate for Agile acquisition strategies. NOW lets MOVEINTO Agile terms. Acceptance criteria. These criteria, by which a work item, usually a user story, is judged to be successful or not. Either all or nothing, it is done or not done. Acceptance criteria are developed to identify when the user story has been completed and meet the preset standards for quality and production readiness. Acceptance testing. Formal testing conducted to determine whether or not a user story satisfies its acceptance criteria in preparation for the customer to accept or reject it. Affinity estimation, an estimating technique used to quickly estimate for release planning a large number of user stories and story points. It is often used when a project has just started and has a backlog that has not been estimated yet. It gives new programs an idea of how to scale user stories and helps communicate that information to stakeholders. This is related to a group estimation technique known as wideband Delphi from traditional planning. Agile, an umbrella term for a variety of best practices in software development. Agile software development supports the practice of shorter software delivery. Specifically, Agile calls for the delivery of software requirements in small and manageable predetermined increments based on an inspect and adapt approach where the requirements change frequently and software is released in increments. More a philosophy than a methodology, Agile emphasizes early and continuous software delivery, fast feedback cycles, rhythmic delivery cadence, the use of collaborative teams, and measuring progress in terms of working software. There are many specific methodologies that fall under this category, including Scrum, Extreme Programming, and Kanban. Architecture, a set of values and practices that support the active evolution of the planning, designing, and constructing of a system. The approach evolves over time, while simultaneously supporting the needs of current customers. Enterprise architecture is the conceptual model of principles and practices to guide organizations through the structure, operation, information, process, and technology changes necessary to execute and achieve their current and future strategies and objectives. These practices use the various aspects of an enterprise to identify, motivate, and achieve the necessary changes. Functional architecture is the infrastructure and roadmap used to fully address the needs of the system in the present and in the future. System architecture is the conceptual model that defines the structure, behavior, and views of a system, organized in a way that supports reasoning for its structures and behaviors. Backlog. The backlog is a list of features, user stories, and tasks to be addressed by the team, program, or portfolio and is ordered from the highest priority to the lowest priority. A backlog includes both functional and non-functional work, including technical team-generated user stories, features, or epics. If new requirements or defects are discovered, they are added to the backlog. A backlog can occur at varying levels. For example, a product backlog is a high-level backlog that contains all the requirements for the entire program, and an iteration backlog includes a list of user stories intended for that iteration. Backlog refinement. The process for keeping the backlog updated by adding detail and revisiting the order and estimates assigned to work that teams agree to be necessary. This allows details to emerge as knowledge increases through feedback and learning cycles. This is also called backlog grooming. Business manager, a person who uses program management techniques and agile principles to deliver business value. This person is responsible for removing impediments, stimulating empowerment, collaboration, and communication, and makes decisions that ensure a sustainable pace. Business sponsor owns the business case for a program and is responsible for the business solution. The sponsor is usually the most senior person on the program and typically allows the program to progress without interference, generally only getting involved with escalated issues. Burn down chart, a visual tool displaying progress via a simple line chart representing the remaining work vertical axis over time horizontal axis. It shows where the team stands regarding completing the tasks that comprise the backlog items. Related to the burn-up chart, except burn-down charts display remaining work instead of work accomplished. Burn up chart, a visual tool displaying progress via a simple line chart representing work accomplished vertical axis over time horizontal axis. Burn up charts are also typically used at the release and iteration levels. They are related to the burn down chart except they display accomplished work instead of remaining work. Cadence, the rhythm and predictability that a team enjoys by delivering in consistent time boxes. Capacity, the quantity of resources available to perform useful work. Champion, spreads Agile principles and continually makes adjustments to Agile practices that suit the environment for successful outcomes. Their goal is to assist with Agile adoption and transformation and influence others regarding the Agile process. Coding standards, an agreed upon approach for programming style, practices, and methods. Coding standards keep the code consistent and comprehensible for the entire team to read and refactor. The concept is that code that looks the same encourages collective ownership. Collective code ownership, a software development principle popularized by extreme programming. Its principle is that all contributors to a given codebase have access to and are jointly responsible for the code in its entirety. Collective code ownership, as the name suggests, is the explicit convention that every team member is not only allowed, but has a positive duty to make changes to any code file as necessary to complete a development task, to repair a defect, or to improve the code's overall structure. Complexity, point units of measure used to estimate development work in terms of complexity, but not effort. Continuous delivery is one of the principles of the Agile Manifesto. Continuous delivery builds on continuous integration by taking the step of orchestrating multiple builds, coordinating different levels of automated testing, and moving the code into a production environment in a process that is as automated as possible. Continuous deployment builds on continuous delivery and is a software delivery practice in which the release process is fully automated in order to have changes promoted to the production environment with little or no human intervention. Continuous integration teams practicing continuous integration seek to objectives to minimize the duration and effort required by each integration episode and to be able to deliver at any moment a product version suitable for release. In practice, this dual objective requires an integration procedure that is reproducible at the very least and mostly automated. This is achieved through version control tools, team policies and conventions, and tools specifically designed to help achieve continuous integration. Could have refers to those features that are not critical for the program. While these features have a higher priority than nice-to-have features, they do not need to be delivered as part of the core capabilities. See also should have, must have, and nice to have. Cross-functional team, a team that is made up of people who have a mixed skills and ability to define, build, and test ideas into a working product. Customer, synonymous with business sponsor because the customer is ultimately the user of the solution. The customer is an integral part of the development and has specific responsibilities depending on the Agile methods used. The customer wants continuous improvement of products and services. Daily stand-up meeting, a brief, daily communication and planning forum where the developers and other relevant stakeholders evaluate the health and progress of the iteration. Attendees also discuss any impediments to their planned progress. Definition of done, a predefined set of criteria that must be met before a work item is considered to be complete. This set of criteria serves as a checklist that is used to check each work item for completeness and used as the work item's artifact. DevOps, an extension of Agile that includes operations and all other functions that support the application development lifecycle to increase efficiency, consistency, quality, and sustainability. Epic, a large user story that can span an entire release or multiple releases. An epic is progressively refined into features and then into smaller user stories that are at the appropriate level for daily work tasks and are captured in the backlog. It is useful as a placeholder to keep track of and prioritize larger ideas. Evolutionary development. The evolutionary strategy develops a system in builds, but differs from the incremental strategy in acknowledging that the customer need is not fully understood and all requirements cannot be defined up front. In this strategy, customer needs and system requirements are partially defined up front, then are refined in each succeeding build. Extreme Programming XP, a software development approach based on the values of communication, simplicity, feedback, and respect. Some of XP's core practices are test-driven development, refactoring, pair programming, collective ownership, continuous integration, coding standards, and sustainable pace. Feature, a functional or non-functional distinguishing characteristic of a system that can be an enhancement to an existing system. Features are a customer-understandable, customer-valued piece of functionality that serves as a building block for prioritization, planning, estimation, and reporting. Framework, a collection of values, principles, practices, and rules that form the foundation for development. Function point, a unit of measure for functional size that looks at the logical view of the software code, accounting for external inputs, external outputs, external inquiries, external interface files, and internal logical files. Integration testing, the phase in software testing in which individual software modules are combined and tested as a group. It typically occurs after unit testing and before validation or acceptance testing. Organizations without continuous integration, continuous development (CI/CD) need integration testing at the end of iterations, but those with CI/CD do not. Iteration, a predefined, time-boxed and recurring period of time in which working software is created. Instead of relying on extensive planning and design, an iteration relies on rework informed by customer feedback. Kanban, the term Kanban is Japanese and derived from roots that translate to visual board. Kanban's focus is to optimize the throughput of work by visualizing the flow of work through the process, limiting work in progress, and explicitly identifying policies for the flow of work. Kanban has distinct differences from other popular Agile methodologies, primarily the fact that it is not based on time-boxed iterations, but rather allows for continuous prioritization and delivery of work. Kanban board, unlike a task board, the Kanban board is not reset at the beginning of each iteration. Its columns represent the different processing states of a unit of value, which is generally but not necessarily equated with a user story. Each column may have associated with it a work in progress limit. The priority is to clear current work in progress, and team members will swarm to help those working on the item, blocking the flow of the work. Kanban method, an approach to continuous improvement that relies on visualizing the current system of work, scheduling, managing flow as the primary measure of performance, and whole system optimization. As a process improvement approach, it does not prescribe any particular practices. Agile teams employing a Kanban method may de-emphasize the use of iterations, effort estimates, and velocity as a primary measure of progress. Rely on measures of lead time or cycle time instead of velocity. And replace the task board with a Kanban board. Minimum viable product, the simplest version of a product that can be released. A minimally viable product should have enough value that it is still usable, demonstrates future benefit early on to retain customer buy-in, and provides a feedback loop to help guide future development. MOSCO, a prioritization technique used to reach a common understanding with stakeholders on the importance placed on the delivery of each requirement. It is also known as MOSCO prioritization or MOSCO analysis. MOSCO is an acronym for must have features, should have features, could have features, and will not have features. Must haves those features that are critical for a program. These are the features that must be delivered as part of the requirements. In addition to must-have features, there are also should-have, could-have, and nice-to-have features. Nice to have those features that are not critical for the program's success. These are the features that are developed if there is enough time or money to develop them. Pair programming to developers working side by side to develop code and how may frequently switch roles to complete tasks. This method of programming provides a real-time code review, allowing one developer to think ahead while the other thinks about the work at hand, and it supports cross-training. The concept can also be extended to pair designing and pair unit testing to provide real-time peer reviews. Pair programming is a fundamental part of XP. Peer inspections, a form of code review performed by a peer that occurs after the code is complete to ensure consistency. Product, a tangible item produced to create specific value to satisfy a want or requirement. Product owner, the voice of the customer, the person who is accountable for ensuring business value is delivered by creating customer-centric items, typically user stories, ordering them, and maintaining them in the backlog. The product owner defines acceptance criteria for user stories. In Scrum, the product owner is the sole person entity responsible for managing the backlog. The product owner's duties typically include clearly expressing the backlog items, prioritizing the backlog items to reflect goals and missions, keeping the backlog visible to all, optimizing the value of development work, ensuring that the developers fully understand the backlog items, and deciding when a feature is done. A product owner should be available to the team within a reasonable time for both decision-making and empowerment. Program, the result of a development effort. In the context of this guide, a program can also be called a project or can refer to multiple projects managed as one program. Quality attribute, a factor that specifies the degree of an attribute that affects the quality that the system or software must possess, such as performance, modifiability, or usability. Refactoring involves modifying code to improve performance, efficiency, readability, or simplicity without affecting functionality. It is done after automated regression tests are written to ensure that existing functionality has not actually been affected with the modifications. Generally considered part of the normal development process, refactoring improves software longevity, adaptability, and maintainability over time. Regression testing, a type of software testing that verifies that software that was previously developed and tested still performs correctly after it was changed or interfaced with other software. These changes may include software enhancements, patches, configuration changes, etc. During regression testing, new software bugs or regressions may be discovered. Release, a planning segment of requirements typically captured as features or user stories in the backlog that deploys needed capabilities. The release is a time-boxed event that consists of a set number of iterations that are determined by the program. The release plan is where different sets of usable functionality or products are scheduled to be delivered to the customer. Requirement: a condition or capability needed by a customer to solve a problem or achieve an objective. Requirements scrub: see backlog refinement. Retrospective: a team meeting that occurs at the end of every iteration to review lessons learned and to discuss how the team can improve the process and team dynamics. The retrospective is an integral part of Agile planning and process and product improvement. Typically, a retrospective occurs at the end of every iteration or release. During each retrospective, the team explores ways to improve how they communicate, collaborate, problem solve, and resolve conflict in an effort to improve their own performance. Roadmap: a high-level plan that outlines a set of releases and the associated features. The roadmap is intended to be continuously revised as the plan evolves. It can also be used in waterfall development programs, but typically a different term would be used. See related terms in Appendix III. Scrum: Scrum is a framework for developing and sustaining complex products. See Appendix V for a brief description of Scrum and other Agile methods. Should have those features that are not critical for a program and do not need to be delivered as part of the requirements. However, these features are higher priority than the could have or nice to have features and could significantly improve the capability of the program. Solution: products, systems, or services delivered to the business sponsor that provide value and achieve goals. A specific way of satisfying one or more needs in a context. Sprint: see iteration. Stakeholder: anyone who has an interest in the program. Specifically, parties that may be affected by a decision made by or about the program, or that could influence the implementation of the program's decisions. Stakeholder engagement is a key part of corporate social responsibility and for achieving the program's vision. A group or individual with a relationship to a program change, a program need, or the solution can be considered a stakeholder. Storyboard: a wall chart or digital equivalent with markers, cards, sticky notes, etc. Used to track user stories' progress for each iteration. For example, the board may be divided into to do, in progress, done, etc. And the movement of the markers across the board indicates a particular user story's progress. One goal of the storyboard may also be to recognize the order and the dependencies of the user stories in representing end-to-end functionality for the customer. Story map: a visual technique to prioritize user stories by creating a map of customers, their activities, and the user stories needed to implement the required functionality. Story point: a unit of measure for expressing the overall size of a user story, feature, or other piece of work in the backlog. The number of story points associated with a user story represents the complexity of the user story relative to other user stories in the backlog. There is no set formula for estimating the size of a user story. Rather, a story point estimate is an amalgamation of the amount of effort involved in developing the feature, the complexity of developing it, and the risk inherent in it. Sustainable pace: a management workload philosophy that is a part of the XP Agile method. See Appendix V for a brief description of the XP method. It refers to a manageable, constant workload negotiated between the team and management so that the team will not be overextended. Sustainable pace is crucial when using velocity to estimate how much work a team is able to complete during an iteration. Team facilitator: a person who has the explicit role of conducting a meeting and provides indirect or unobtrusive assistance, guidance, and supervision. Their primary focus is creating a process that helps the group achieve the intent of the meeting and takes little part in the discussions on the meeting's topics. Technical debt: the obligation that a software organization incurs when it chooses a design or construction approach that is expedient in the short term, but increases complexity and is more costly in the long term. Test-driven development: a software development process that relies on the repetition of a very short development cycle with unit testing. For example, first the developer writes an initially failing automated test case that defines a desired improvement or new function, then produces the minimum amount of code to pass that test, and finally refactors the new code to acceptable standards. Theme: a group of user stories that share a common attribute, and for convenience they are grouped together and may span programs. A theme may be broken down into sub-themes, which are more likely to be product-specific. They can be used to drive strategic alignment and communicate a direction. Time box: a time box is a previously agreed upon period of time during which a person or a team works steadily towards completing a product. Rather than allow work to continue until the product is completed and evaluating the time taken, the time box approach consists of stopping work when the time limit is reached and evaluating what was accomplished. For example, in Scrum, the daily Scrum is a 15-minute time-boxed event. This means that the daily Scrum should take up to, but no longer than, 15 minutes to complete. Time-boxed iterations are typically associated with Scrum and XP. Unit testing: software testing in which individual units of source code, sets of one or more computer program modules together with associated control data, usage procedures, and operating procedures are tested to determine whether they are fit for use. This is the smallest testable increment in software development. User story: a high-level requirement definition written in everyday or business language. It is a communication tool written by or for customers to guide developers, though it can also be written by developers to express non-functional requirements such as security, performance, or quality. User stories are not vehicles to capture complex system requirements on their own. Rather, full system requirements consist of a body of user stories. User stories are used in all levels of agile planning and execution. An individual user story captures the who, what, and why of a requirement in a simple, concise way, and can be limited in detail by what can be handwritten on a small paper note card, also called story. Velocity: velocity measures the amount of work a team can deliver each iteration. Commonly, this is measured as story points accomplished per iteration. For example, if a team completed 100 story points during an iteration, the velocity for the team would be 100. Velocity is a team-specific abstract metric and should not be compared across teams as a measure of relative productivity. Verification and validation testing: independent procedures that are used together for checking whether the program meets the requirements and specifications. That is, that it fulfills its intended purpose. Vision: the highest level of agile planning, the purpose for the program that is strategic in nature. The vision represents a shared understanding of the mission and objectives, capability gaps, expected behavior, and final outcomes to be addressed. The vision should be consistent over the life of the program unless business needs change significantly.